Granny here, come to read you a story. Get snuggled down, close those little eyes. Are you ready? Then I'll begin. At the bottom of the garden sat a pile of old bricks. They were dusty and unused, and some of them were growing a very pretty green moss. Others were hiding rather large families of minute scurrying spiders. This is the story of one of those bricks and the adventures she had when she decided to scrape free from the brick pile. Now, just to set expectations, this is not a fast-paced story. It takes time and patience for our brick to get going. The tilt of the planet, the weather, high winds and such, maybe even a little human intervention and a sprinkle of magic. Our particular brick, the heroine of our story, she has a fire inside her to see new sights, to travel, as much as a brick that can only move at a slow scrape can travel. She'd maybe even love to travel the whole length and breadth of the garden. She couldn't see it all from where she was, but she just knew there was more to the garden than she could see from her place in the brick pile. We can't call our heroine our brick for the rest of her story, so let me introduce her to you. Her name is Buddi, but all who know and love her call her Buddi. As bricks go, Buddi is a beauty. She is a warm terracotta colour. She's an air brick, which makes her very special. She has 3 holes running through her to allow circulation of air. She was clearly created to be magnificent from the off. One of these holes has a growth of the most vibrant green moss growing out of it and onto 2 sides of her like a shock of wild and wonderful hair. Buddi's best friend in the whole garden is Rudy. He is such a little scamp. He's from a huge family. There are hundreds of them. Rudy is the one with a sense of mischief so vast it's only matched by his sense of humour. He can find a funny in almost any situation, and he does get himself into a lot of those. He has a long Latin name that none of his friends can say, and honestly, if you wrote his name down on a piece of paper, it would stretch 12 times further than Rudy himself, so I, for one, am very happy to call him Rudy. Rudy is a jumping spider, and if he'd been human and still able to do all the things he can now, well, he would quite frankly be a superhero. He can jump 40 times his own body length in any direction, forwards, backwards, or sideways. It's amazing to see. He also has 340-degree vision, so almost around in a full circle. I believe he has never stopped trying for that extra 20%. Now, you might be fooled into thinking that such gifts would only be possible in a huge, muscled, very strong spider, but no. Rudy measures a mere 5 millimeters, just half a centimetre. I can see that you're impressed. Anyway, I digress. All great adventures start with a single tiny spark of a thought. It ignites and builds, and before you know it, the fire is lit. Putting that fire out is just not an option. Following those flickering flames, that fantastic furnace, is all that Buddi could think about, until the beginning of the adventure began to take shape. That first tentative scrape to freedom and the unknown reaches of the garden. Buddi is a bit of a dreamer. She watches the clouds above floating on by and just loves the thought that there are so many things in the garden that she just doesn't know. She basks in the sunshine, feeling the warmth soak right through her clay and shale, warming the breeze that runs right through the middle of her. Well, that was what she was trying to do, but Rudy would insist on running right through the middle of her too, tickling her and distracting her from her wonderings. She was wondering about time, and wasn't it a funny thing? She had no idea how long she had been part of that brick pile at the bottom of the garden. It must have been for quite a long time, because she remembers being quite smooth once, not even a hint of the wild, wonderful moss of more recent times. She remembers being part of a structure once, not like now, where she lay with other bricks all higgledy-piggledy, bored without a purpose. She was part of something, serving a purpose. She remembers that the humans from inside the giant brick structure across the garden used to come out on hot summer evenings and all stand around her in her little structure. There was chatter that she didn't understand. There was laughter that she didn't need to understand. And she knew they were happy and chatty and eating food that she helped to cook. She was part of something wonderful. A long hot summer that seemed to go on and on. She was warm, happy, and supporting the humans that lived in the big structure across the garden. Then the weather changed and it got colder at night and the humans stopped visiting. They didn't come to her part of the garden anymore, and it was such a long time that her little structure collapsed, and she and her fellow bricks became the pile of bricks they are today. And it really must have been a long time ago, because she has grown her long mossy hair since then. Rudy and his family came to live in the crevice between Buddi and the soil underneath. They happily settled in, and that's where Buddi and Rudy's friendship was born. The weather was starting to turn warmer, the garden was growing, and the humans started coming outside more and more. Strangely, they were new humans this time. Much smaller, squealy humans that ran around a lot. As time went by and the little humans got a little bigger, Buddi was making her way to the front of the brick pile. She wanted to watch all the fun, to reach out and be part of their adventure. One day, a new creature arrived in the garden, a tiny bundle of fluff that yapped as much as the small humans squealed. The humans loved the fluffy one very much. They made time in the garden every day to teach Fluff to sit and stay, to go fetch and play. Fluff got a little older and quite a bit bigger, until it seemed that he was allowed to stay in the garden without his humans. That was a regular thing throughout that summer, until one rather special day. The biggest of the humans came over to the brick pile and started taking bricks to build something new. Now, Buddi didn't know what that was yet, but she did know that she wanted to be a part of it. This looked very much like a new adventure to her, and she wasn't going to miss out on that. She warned Rudy that she was going to be at the very front of the brick pile by the next morning, doing her best to be chosen by the biggest human for the new build. Rudy was very excited and scuttled up and down, tickling Buddi, insisting that he go too. She couldn't go on an adventure without him. Oh no, that wouldn't do at all. Oh, joy of joys! Buddi was delighted to be chosen. She was moved to the new site across the garden the very next day. She was built into the 4th row on the back of the new structure, and when it was finished, it looked a little like the pile of bricks the humans came from, only much smaller. In case you were worried, Rudy didn't miss out. He very cleverly hid himself amongst Buddi's wild green mossy hair so as not to be seen. And when the humans went back to their own pile of bricks, they left Fluff outside in the garden alone. He crawled inside the new structure and curled up on a big squishy cushion against the back wall, ready to go to sleep for the night. And that was the moment our two friends became 3. Every night, Fluff snuggled up to sleep right alongside Buddi, while Rudy ran all over them, spinning webs, doing his bit to cover Fluff and Buddi and keep them warm. Buddi would spread her mossy green hair over Fluff and try to let him know she was there for him. And Fluff, for his part, shared his body heat with Buddi and Rudy. Sometimes Rudy would be a little bit mischievous and spin his tiny webs over Fluff's eyes, just to make Buddi laugh at how Fluff couldn't tell if he was still asleep or awake when he tried to open his eyes. Some days when Rudy did that, Fluff just went back to sleep, and other days he'd bat at the webs with his paws until he could see properly. It was always funny, and Rudy never got tired of it, the little scamp. That winter was wonderful for Buddi and Rudy. They were warm and happy, living the dream with their new best friend. The humans stopped coming into the garden. In fact, Buddi and Rudy didn't see anything of them. Even over by their own brick pile across the garden, Fluff stopped coming to sleep snuggled up with Buddi and Rudy. It seemed that Fluff and the humans had left, and in their place were two new humans. These were slower and greyer, with no short humans running around at all, and definitely no fluffy playmate that would sleep in the kennel. It came to pass that Buddi was on her way to a new adventure, and no adventure would be any fun if Rudy weren't there with her. The grey humans didn't need a kennel, so they dismantled it and stood humming and hawing over the new pile of bricks, unsure what to do next. The grey human with the soft voice had an idea. Now, Buddi may not have spoken human, but she recognised an aha moment when she saw one. She made sure she was at the front of the brick pile the next morning, so she could be first to be chosen for the next big thing. The next big thing turned out to be a bird bath, and it was magnificent. A tower of bricks that swept round in a kind of helter-skelter style. At the top was one brick on its end, and on top of that was Buddi in pride of place, right above the concrete bowl filled with water for the birds to sit in, bathe in, or play in. Some of the birds, on a bright and sunny day, would even have a sleep in the water. Buddi had never had so much company. Birds would sit on her to watch other birds in the water or chirp to each other, and it seems that birds really do love to chirp an awful lot. They would sit on Buddi and have snacks that the grey humans left Buddi in charge of for them. Rudy would settle inside the air holes running through Buddi for the day while the birds played, for fear of being mistaken for lunch, because that wouldn't do at all. He would come out to play in the evenings when the birds had gone off to settle in their nests for the night. He was quite the swimmer, and being as tiny as he was, the bird bath was like having an Olympic swimming pool all to himself. Some days, if you looked closely, you could see Rudy's brothers and sisters and cousins all scurrying up the side of the bird bath for a pool party, while Buddi happily sat and watched over them, all in the beautiful light of a glowing red sunset. These were the happiest of times, and Buddi was so very happy. Her moss grew longer and spread onto her third side. It dangled over the end of her and down towards the water in the bird bath, like a beautiful green waterfall. Rudy got older and had a very, very large family of his own that lived inside the bird bath tower, and they too would come and join in the summer evening pool parties. Many happy summers were spent playing with the birds, basking in the sun, watching Rudy and family playing, learning all about the different birds that came to visit. Buddi felt she had the best life, and she looked back fondly at the feisty young brick she had been and marvelled at her own bravery, daring to scrape away from the brick pile to find this wonderful life. One day, Buddi noticed that Rudy hadn't been to play, and although he usually visited every day, Buddi wasn't too worried and just thought her favourite little scamp was off having a mini adventure of his own. He didn't come to visit the following day either, and word came to Buddi through Rudy's scurrying family that Rudy had left this life for his next big adventure. Buddi was very sad because she missed her best friend. She was also very happy to have all the fun memories of their shared adventures to look back on, and she would always have those to make her happy whenever she missed her tiny friend. Now Rudy was gone, Buddi decided it was time for one more adventure. So she took herself off on her travels and scraped off the bird bath and across the garden. A little bit of magic and human intervention later, Buddi found herself being chosen as the very last brick needed to complete a beautiful new archway around the gate at the end of the garden. Now, I am certain that Buddi was chosen because she was the most distinctive seasoned brick with her warm colours and mossy green hair. She was most unlike any other brick in the garden. I am equally certain that a little bit of magic was at work here, because as Buddi settled into her new place at the very top of the new archway, something wonderful happened. Buddi looked out from her new home at the very top of that archway and realised with wonder that there was so much more to life than her garden. Buddi a brick, Buddi to her friends, took a good long look at that world outside her garden. She heard adventure calling. Night night, sweet dreams.